Hey, this is Joe Mastriona, better known as Joe M., co-host of Life After Fame podcast, with my best friend Joe Boglino, better known as Joe B. Yep, we're the two Joes. Thanks for being here today. If you've already subscribed to the show, thank you so much, and a big shout out to our Life After Fame tribe. We love you guys. If you're here for the first time, well, welcome. Make sure you subscribe to the show because today, like in every episode, we're bringing you the most amazing transformational stories of former pro athletes, coaches, musicians, and actors, ordinary people who have achieved the extraordinary. We share with you where they are now, what they're doing, and the challenges of transitioning and beginning a life outside of the arena and/or stage. So buckle up, Life After Fame listeners, because this is going to be an amazing ride. Let's do this.
Welcome to Life After Fame podcast. Just imagine 70,000 fans cheering your name when you've scored the winning touchdown. Imagine standing on stage looking out at the crowd, rocking out to that chart-busting song you created. The applause and recognition you received for your masterful acting performance in that latest blockbuster movie. And then, one day, the cheering stops. This podcast is all about catching up with these stars of yesterday to find out where they're at now and who they are as people, beyond the stardom. This is a true human interest podcast about the people we loved to root for. And now, your hosts, Joe Mastriona and Joe Boglino.
Be prepared, be present, be confident, be energetic, and be reliable. 5 actions to build trust and respect described out of former NBA coach Phil Weber's new book, How Do You Make Them Thirsty? We talked to the former coach about transition, leadership, and perseverance, and the experience he's taking from over 3 decades of coaching players in colleges and in the NBA to his current endeavors in consulting and in tech. I hope you enjoy it. Today, we are joined by former NBA coach, now advisor, speaker, author, executive consultant, Phil Weber. Phil, welcome to the spotlight of Life After Fame.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me. Joe and Joe, I guess, I don't know, Joe squared, right? So I'm very able to be here. I think that your podcast, what it is, the vision of it should be commended. And I'm sure that many people will benefit from your discussions and ideas around the transition.
Well, Phil, we first wanted to start off with your book, How to Make Them Thirsty, a roadmap for developing the potential in others. And what struck Joe and I first about it, and it's really a personal narrative about your experience coaching for NBA players. And I think a lot of things that you've learned and you're distilling and giving out in a roadmap and some advice and tools that people can use for various things, whether it's the development of coworkers or coaching other people, players, and so on. What struck us was the very first chapter, which is titled, This is Good, But Why? And we want to talk about that a little bit later, because that's an incredible point of awareness, I think, that you get from going through some pretty bad stuff and how to look at it positively. But you started off with a quote from Stan Van Gundy. It reads, in this business, if you lose, you're going to get fired. If you win, you still may get fired. That's the hard part. And then you follow that with the first line in this chapter, which is in quotes. It says, Phil, we're going in a different direction. And when Joe and I looked at that, we thought we've got to get Phil on because he's obviously experienced transition, whether it's been by his own choice or whether it's been bestowed upon him. And I bet he's got a lot of advice around this topic.
Well, it's funny that success is hard to deal with. But I think our first lessons are always in adversity, where when we face it, it's something that we really don't want to go through. It's something that we want to shy away from. Having gone through it quite a few times, right? Those are the times when you grow the most. And it goes to the questions that we ask ourselves every single moment. Like right now, and one of my passions, I guess, or focuses has always been to try to understand our minds and how they work. And right now, as I speak, I stop thinking. You guys can't do it. You can't do it. Right now, you're thinking to 600 to 800 words a minute. And of those thoughts, the question is, are they empowering or disempowering? So the very first time I ever really felt adversity was when I was let go at Florida, because I didn't have a tremendous playing career at NC State, but I got to experience some amazing things. And my entry into college coaching happened with one phone call, because of the person who had recruited me knew who I was, hard work and stuff. And I was coaching at 23. Oh, all of a sudden I'm on the bench for University of Florida at the age of 23. This coaching thing, I'm taking the words of
piece of cake, right?
Of Coach V. Let's go win a championship. So I'm just going to be all in, right? So it wasn't until after we won the SEC championship for the first time in Florida history. They had never won the SEC. We won it. And the following year, practice had already started. We had everybody back. And as a coach knows, when you felt success as a team, there's a chemistry that's come together, and you know it. People have matured a little bit. So we were on pace to have another amazing, probably better year. And because of Coach Sloan and the AD at the time, they were going at heads. They were banging. And they found a way. I won't go into the whole story of it. They found a way to let Coach go, and he was forced to resign. And he had a clause in his contract that said, if you are, quote unquote, indicted, which that goes into a whole nother story of some players that we had, but you will be fired without cause. So he was at 65 at the time, and he didn't want to have a possibility of losing that, right? So he said, okay, I'm going to resign. Well, it was on Halloween. So I'm cruising in. We started the 15th. It's the 31st, a little over 2 weeks. I go in my office, and let me tell you, when I got that phone call, and you can hear the buzz around the arena, right? You know what's kind of coming because you've heard some stuff. And okay, it's my turn to go talk to the AD. So when that happened, I got to be honest with you, it's the first time when he told me, Phil, we'd love to keep you, but we just can't. For the next guy coming in, it's like politics to a certain extent. Oh, get to my office, I get in my car, and I'll tell you, in Niagara Falls, the first time in a long time, because I feel I'm letting my family down. I'm getting a little emotional right now just because all of a sudden now they're looking at me. In my mind, they would be looking at me a different way, but they didn't care. My family was with me. They didn't care. So the funny part about it was I get in my car, go home, had a condo where a couple former players I let live with me. And when I got home, there were 3 TV stations outside my door, and they wanted a comment from me. So now I walk up, and I gave them whatever, I can't remember. But then I walk inside my condo with former players are hanging out in there, right? And they're looking at me and go, hey, what are you going to be, a coach? And it was like, oh, this is a tough crowd. You going to dress up as a coach tonight?
That's a cold shot, right, Coach? I mean, it's a little bit of a jab.
Hey, it's water off a duck's back. So we get in there, and I'm coming a long way to get to this point. So that next day, one was working, one was in school. So they go to class, they go to their job. And here I am for the first time in that position where there's nothing that lay ahead. So now, having done that, I will tell you that by asking a empowering question, all of a sudden I got a great answer. And that empowering question was, believe it or not, I just got let go, had forced to resign. How can I make this the greatest year of my life? Well, you start thinking in a different, well, this may be the only year. It's 2 weeks into the season. Coaching is musical chairs. When the season starts, everybody's sitting down. There's no openings, right? So I'm like, okay, this may be the only year of my career that I'm not coaching somebody else. And I had also another goal when I started coaching. I wanted to have more friends in the NBA than college than anybody else. And so I had developed some friendships, and that's a whole nother genre into the transition I think we can get into later. But so I created my own university that year. I visited 16 different universities. Gators paid me. So I had a Northeast swing, a Midwest swing, Southeast swing, and a West Coast swing. And I can't tell you, it changed my life because of the people I was able to meet, the practices that I was able to watch, and the relationships I was able to forge because I asked that empowering question. So what I normally talk to in some of my talks is that the same horrible thing happened to two different people on different parts of the world. Horrible. This person over here says, why did he have to do that to me? Well, guess what? It's biblical. Ask and ye shall receive. You ask a bad question, you're going to get a bad answer. Over here, same horrible thing happened. And this person says, how can I grow from this? How can I use this to better my life or someone else's life? Spiral up. We make 1,000 decisions, small and large, every day. What is the litmus of your decisions? Are they empowered or disempowered? Are you solution driven or do you dwell on the problems?
You're 28 years old. Who gave you that perspective? Because in my opinion, that is high level, especially when the waves are crashing down on your head. And like you said, there are always choices. But sometimes unconsciously, especially at an early age, we don't even know we're making decisions in our head with our self-talk. But the self-talk you had, if you don't like the results you're getting, ask better questions. And that's what you did. Where did you get that from, Phil?
I appreciate the question because so let's start off at the 23, right? So again, taking a page out of V's book, I want to be the best I can be. I want to be the best coach. So I go to a bookstore. Guess what? I have no idea what book to get. I mean, I'm in this bookstore. I don't know any clue. So I see the title, Peak Performance. Oh, okay. Let me start there. Let me start with that one. Guess what, gents? It was like watching paint dry. I'm like, I just couldn't get through it, but I persisted a little bit. So I found this other book that was by Og Mandino. And I'll tell you, the first one I read, I'll give credit to the first one, was The Greatest Success in the World by Og Mandino. And he referred to his best-selling book, which I hadn't stumbled on yet, but he referred it to me. And it was The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. Now, why do I say that? Because if you, and I've given out, no lie, and I don't say this to impress you at all, but I've given out close to 750, it's probably almost 800 now. So I have them with me and I keep them a couple if I go on a plane. So it has 10 scrolls. And in those scrolls, it teaches you how to unlock the magic of each scroll. In the scroll Mark 1, which I think is planned, is the longest of all scrolls. Okay, so now I read that scroll and I listened to it, and it says basically you shall read this scroll when you arise silently to yourself. And then again, silently to yourself, you should read it after you partake of your midday meal. And then lastly, and most importantly, you should read it aloud to yourself. And soon the words of the scrolls will seep into your subconscious, and soon you'll act as if the scrolls had instructed you to. So, I don't know, I'm an open book. I bought in, and I lived with that book for 10 months. And how can you argue? How can you argue against, I will greet this day with love in my heart, for love is my weapon and love is my shield? How can you argue against, I will persist until I succeed? For in the Orient, young bulls are tested for the fight arena in a certain manner. The bravery of each bull is tested with care according to the number of times it attacks a picador. You read it 90 times, it becomes the software of your mind. How can you argue against, I am master of my emotions, the tide comes, the tide. So I can go on. I will live this day as if it was my last. Things that you really value, right? So I'll end the story here. And now, Halloween happened, and I ended up selling my condo. And I'm going up. It's moving day. And I'm up in that same bookshelf where I put Peak Performance. And I'm like, let me just take a look at this. So I started opening. Now, 4 years had passed. And I don't know how many books. I'm like, okay, got it. Growth, right? Growth.
Yeah.
And again, I think that is one of the best ways to prepare yourself for transition. Leaders are readers. And now you have the opportunity to hear podcasts, you have audio books, which I can't tell you. I valued my commute for Iona when I coached in college there, and when I had my Phoenix Suns days, and then New York and New Orleans and Miami. I valued those commutes because my car was my classroom. And I may listen to the same at the time CD,
Smart.
now whatever audio book. I may listen to it 3 or 4 times in a row, but I'm at a different place when I hear it. So you get different distinctions. I've been fortunate and blessed by all the people who have written before me, and who I just want to pay it forward. Right?
So I think the old saying is the teacher will appear when the student's ready.
That.
And I've experienced that myself with the exact same thing that you just described. I've gotten these books or these audibles and I was super excited, but it sat on the shelf or sat in my phone for a little bit. And it could be 3 months. It could be 3 years down the road. And I see it again. I'm thinking to myself, why didn't I do this 3 years ago? But that's saying I wasn't ready. And I really also believe that we bring everything to us. We bring the books that come to us. We bring the people and the experience that come to us. You just have to be aware and awake. And that's what you've demonstrated here, Coach. With that mindset and that perspective that you had being a student of the mind and life, you've had front row seat to a lot of transitions, not only, of course, your own. Being a former NBA coach, dealing with player development, you've seen a lot of transition. Can you talk to us about some good examples of transitions that you've seen others make that you've learned from?
Yeah, and let me use a friend of mine's, because it's absolutely, to me, one of the best and I didn't know him well as a player. I know him much better now, but Jamal Mashburn. So Mash told me that he always had a vision of him carrying a basketball in one hand and a briefcase in the other. So that vision kept him always open to those different possibilities. So therefore, what does that do to the brain?
It turns it on, right? It gives you possibilities.
They call it an activation center, where all of a sudden you maybe never bought a black sport coat like this, but you finally do. Never noticed it prior, but now all of a sudden you're out and you say, hey, wait a minute. You never would have noticed it. That's what an idea is. That's what a vision does. Okay. Now a vision is only one part of it, because a vision only can give you ideas of where you want to go. The real essence needs to be in the process, the day-to-day, the consistent work and belief that you can do it, and embracing all the above and working towards that. But you have to have the vision. And I talk about that in my book. I mean, there were some players where that was, to me, a major part of the player development work, because if you don't have a vision for it, how are you going to get there? Because you don't know really where you want to go. And Stephen Covey calls it begin with the end in mind, where we have to have that vision where we want to go, and then understand that you'll do whatever it takes to get there. That's why with what Jamal did, it was so poignant to me. It was so, because he had that vision early. He saw it. I mean, LeBron did too. LeBron had that vision. That's why he is who he is. I mean, he's brilliant business as well as one of the best players to ever play.
He was one of the first ones to talk about brand, right, Coach? He was one of the first that I remember to really talk about my own brand.
What you have to understand is, I think, and there's no certainty here, like with the people who have come before him, they did have brand. They weren't talking about it. They just did it because it wasn't something that you just talked about. Now, every player knows he's like a mini corporation. So therefore, how do I evolve my quote unquote brand? But LeBron is masterful, and you can just see little edges of his sphere perpetually moving outward.
Commonsensical when you think about it.
Of course.
You have a vision, and But I think a lot of people forget that. And I know that there's concepts with guys like Dr. Joe Dispenza that have added a component to the vision concept with an elevated emotion and feeling what it's like to be at the end of where you want to be at. But that being said, you've coached a lot of players from various walks of life, from college to overseas to the NBA professionals. And you've probably seen many examples of where maybe something that seems commonsensical to some isn't to others, and there's no judgment there. When you look at a theme of guys, and you don't have to mention any names if you don't want to, those guys that didn't make a transition, that really struggled with the transformation of going from the pros into normal life, what was the piece that they missed? If you look back on it now, that you're like, well, it doesn't really surprise me because they didn't have a vision they were taking with them out of professional sports.
I think about that often, of the guys who haven't been able to make the transition. And it's understanding and valuing change. And I think I talk about in the book, I mentioned Coach V's, and I mentioned it a lot, the two questions that he asked me, not me personally, just our team, right? That if you were a corporation, would you buy stock in yourself? If you were in a room by yourself, do you enjoy the company? So now let's think about that. Having a belief in oneself and understanding where that self is and understanding that, or belief that there's nothing I can't do if I put my mind to it. But what happens is players sometimes get, unfortunately, locked into being ego vested, where they've put too much of their ego into one thing. And you see it. You see some of the ones, there's many of them. I mean, the NBA is a microcosm. We have the highest level of character. And then we have the others that the media, at the other end, you have what the media really likes to perpetuate some, because people like to read about, I'm in their mind, they're thinking, I would never do that. I'm not that like that. And so I think that one of the things I also say to groups is I learned in 8th grade, and it was, there are more ways not to make it than to make it. Because look at all the pitfalls that you can fall into. You can have a bad attitude. You can have a bad addictive habit that's really bad, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, gambling. Just look at you could fill in the blanks. And on the other side of the coin, you have just one thing you really have to do, and that's care. You got to care about your future. You got to care about your family. You got to care about your profession. You got to care about your growth. As long as you care, people feel that. They feel that. And if you get locked into an image of, I'm not in the league now because, and you go outside of your circle of influence, the amount of power you have in the world shrinks, as Stephen Covey would say. But if you just focus on, how can I always improve? How can I make the best of my situation right now? How can I grow? How can I show people that I am worthy of this opportunity? And then I had two beliefs when I was working with players in LA before I was fortunately blessed by Danny Ainge to be meteorically rise right up to the NBA bench. The two main ones, of course, we have more beliefs. The two main ones was, if you reach a certain level of expertise, eventually the compensation will match the expertise. And the other, it's outliers before outliers. 10,000 hour rule. That book hadn't been written. So, and the other thing was, if you give without any expectation of receipt, magic happens. So
I love that.
I've always lived, my parents are amazing, the most giving people that I know. And if you help others get what they want, eventually you'll get what you want. Let's talk about, to me, what is necessary on the mindsets. You better have a growth mindset where every single day you're focused on, how can I improve? Question, right? How can I do this better? What areas do I need to get better in? where you're always looking, always searching, always wanting with a desire to improve. The other mindset that I focus on is outward mindset. We never accomplish anything by ourselves. We always need a team, a group, staff, whatever it is. And it is, how can I fit into this group? How can I help others in this group? And how can I be a star in my role? Whatever role that is. And then the other, which may be, I look at it as it encapsulates the first two. And that is the empowered mindset. Now, how does that relate? Well, Roger Bannister, everybody knows that story. Roger Bannister in 1955 ran the 4-minute mile. Okay, so what? Well, let me tell you what. People thought that it was humanly impossible. Every Olympics up to that, stories, there's no way a human being can run a sub 4-minute mile. Roger Bannister in England and just a professor, I think, doesn't matter to me. He saw it in his mind. 359.4. Saw it.
Yeah, he did it.
And then he did it. Well, guess what? That's not why I tell the story. I tell the story because that year, 18 people broke the 4-minute mile. Where was that limit? How many 4-minute miles do each one of us have? Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, it's
all up here, right?
Yeah, there's so much of it. There's so much of it. And so how do you peel those away? How do you get rid of that? I'm like I test Mike D'Antoni, I know, and spoke in Miami. I know they can tell you that I'm a walking Geiger counter to limiting beliefs. I'm sorry, our language is like a fingerprint. How we say something matters. How we put it really matters. So they'll probably look at me like I'm a little nuts, but I'll be sitting somewhere on a counter eating right by myself, and I hear a server say something that's limiting. And I'm not over the top, but I'm like, excuse me, can I ask you a question? And then you try to get them to think a little differently, because the first part of change is awareness. So now, how do you change anything? Well, you first have to become aware and then focus on making that change a priority. I'll give you the example with Amari Stoudemire and his shot. It was hilarious, and I love him. He's such a fast learner and so gifted physically. In talking about change, right? Awareness is key. So to give you a basketball metaphor, so we were working on his shot, and I explained to him things that happen that the way you've shot it to this point is like a steel cable. So every time you shoot it, it's going to be just like that steel cable. The only way you can become a better shooter is if you put one strand of this new form at a time. And the funny part about it was, I told him, if you do it wrong, you're taking a strand off. So I would hide behind things in the practice court. I would hide in the arena and watch him walk out early in the process. And then I would walk up to him. And I was like, what are you doing? And he didn't know I was watching. What are you doing? It's like, what? You just took 8 strands off. What are you doing? But what is that? It's growth, right? Pretty soon he was more aware. So anybody who's transitioning, I believe, needs to understand the power of their mind, the habits that they want to adopt, because we're the creature of our habits. You show me a person what their habits are, and I'll show you where they're going to be in 5 years. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
totally agree.
My first recommendation is win the morning. Just win the morning. Get yourself some momentum. Win the morning. And I start off, and you used Dr. Joe Dispenza earlier. I've read a couple of his books. I embrace what his teachings are, and he's the first person who for me, demystified meditation. And just, it's the way our minds work. And by meditating in the morning, exercising, stretching, doing all those things, my heart's pumping. I'll probably end my workout on the bike, maybe writing emails, combined activities, right? And the rest of the day flows because I'm oxygenated, I'm feeling good, I've accomplished something, and then I make my bed. My wife, I don't let her make the bed. I make the bed. Because then I want to get another win. I want to get another win. I want to do it perfectly. So now it's so much mental and focus and habits.
So, Coach, with a growth mindset, because there's growth mindset, you mentioned this in your book, and I've read it before as well, growth mindset and fixed mindset. So those two types of mindsets are polar opposite. And
100%.
It's the all or nothing brain is what they call it. It's good to have a vision and look to the end, but you can't rush it. It's not about, hey, I got to get there. It's the journey. And that's what you are referencing, that awareness and that piece that I took in, saying growth. It's all about growth. And I love how you say, win the morning. I've been working on that as well. Win the morning with Dr. Joe Dispenza. You find that a lot of the athletes that you were working with, were more of them on that fixed mindset, or were they on the growth mindset? Because the people that I've talked to seems to be that a lot of us go to that fixed mindset unconsciously. I don't even think that we know we're doing it until someone brings it up in front of us. Did you notice that piece while you were coaching players?
That's an interesting question, because when you're working with so many players, and I've been fortunate to work with some of the best to ever play, the really good ones, and I call it thirst, they all had a thirst to get better. So that's not fixed. It's not fixed. Understand the dynamics of improvement. You improve a little, you get paid a lot. So there's a financial gain by buying in. But the guys that I remember, I don't remember anybody not wanting to. There were levels of all things, of course, but almost all wanted to improve for whatever reason. Some may just stay in the league so they can have a job. Others were certain plateaus that they wanted to reach, and others, just like Kobe, that just wanted to be the best. Steve Nash just wanted to be the best. Mari, I had so many players that was so much skill and determination. So as a player, I haven't noticed. Maybe I've had some situations with coaches where accepting of ideas, just difference of opinion, philosophies, but not empowered, maybe fixed. In certain situations, you got to let it go. Just have to let it go, because it's hard to change those people that don't want to change. Because again, I guess that's the first. You want to change. And then it's the awareness of when you do it, and then you move forward.
And then the practice of it.
And then it's doing it, right? Just doing it. Listen,
reps.
Just do it. Yeah, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. So that mindset is everything. And to finish, the empowered mindset it's just so important to stay fixed and locked in on solutions. Just don't let your mind dwell on the negativity and others. Just repel it, because you know it's not good. So as long as you're solution driven, asking those questions and crafting questions is a skill that people have to concentrate on. I'll tell you this right here. We talk about one of the most important things that you ever say. Follow the two words, I am. Because following I am, guess what? You're defining yourself. You're defining, I'm just this way. I'm just impatient. You're arguing. If you argue for limitations, they're yours. It's a golden nugget. If you argue for it, they're yours. So why have it? Change the way you view yourself. Use empowered language. And one way for transition, a tremendous way that actually neuro-linguistic programmers use, is by creating a list of empowered I ams and say it to yourself 2 or 3 times a day. Make a recording on your smartphone, voice memos. You can have your headset in. I have one. I don't listen to it as much as I used to. And what they tell you is our minds hear with enthusiasm, intensity, they remember better. So as you're recording those into your voice memos or saying it, use intensity, use imagination, you'll remember. So I am, and whatever that line is right there, whatever word that is, you're defining yourself. So catch yourself, be aware of the words that you say after I am.
Our minds are a lot like our muscles, right? I mean, if you do 1 rep on a bicep curl, you're not going to have much progress there. But if you repeat and you add intensity and you continually do it, you grow muscles. I think the mind is the same way. You talk to yourself in that way, you'll grow that kind of behavior. And it's an interesting thing how we are to ourselves, because I don't think that our best friends talk to us as badly as we talk to ourselves because of the way you talk to yourself. It's unbelievable how self-defeating we are and how can't becomes a part of our big narrative. Words do mean something, as you mentioned. Until you get aware of it, you can't make a change. And then you have to repeat until you believe it and then you live it.
No, there's no question. There's no question. But you got to want to improve. You got to want to get better. You got to want to grow. That desire to do that. And, you know, what gets us through those moments of adversity is the level of determination, discipline that we have. And the really great ones, they embrace it. Hopefully I've embraced this. When you learn something, you should teach it. And why is that? Because not only do you, while you're teaching it, learn it better, reinforce it, repetition, but you hold yourself accountable to that. And that's a positive tension. I'll give you an example. If I was a smoker, and I'm not, and I wanted to quit, I'd tell everybody. Because now, if I've told everybody that I'm smoking and all of a sudden I get weak and they see me smoking, hey, what are you doing, right? What I'm telling the world right now about my mindset, catch me if you can. Catch me if you can.
You create accountability for yourself through community, which strengthens now your desire to change that particular habit. And so we just talked about the growth mindset, the wanting the challenges that come with us. The greats all wanted that. What I think I'm hearing from you, Phil, is that transition is absolutely part of our lives. I think that transition is happening all the time. I'd like to talk to you about your transitions because you've gone through some too. You went from at the beginning, like you had mentioned, to being fired, to then working out players in California, to getting a huge break and an opportunity because of your mindset, and you made that break with Danny Ainge, and having a very successful NBA career. And then now you transition into other things, such as your book, becoming an author. Can you talk to us more about your transitions and what you're doing now? As our audience is very interested in what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that. Again, it's been a transition where my last NBA post was I was in the front office of the Pelicans, which was, I loved the organization, the scouting and stuff. And basically COVID came in and that didn't do anything for my personal situation. People have told me, some very good friends, some who have run thought leader organizations have told me I should write a book, but I just never thought I had the platform. And it wasn't until I saw a podcast, and the thought leader asked the question, you can lead horses to water, but you can't make them drink. He said, then what I really want to know is, how do you make them thirsty? And when I heard that, it just hit me like a sledgehammer. And because all I had to do then was imagine what I would do on every day, that was my life basically, because it's in the book. Hopefully, if you're gonna just burn it down to its essence, every player and person and worker and man, they're all different. We're all different. It's the manager, coach's, teacher's job to understand and take pride in understanding that they are different and how to reach them. And that's why reading and exploring and continually learning not only just as a person on a team or an organization or whatever, but as a person, to be able to help, hopefully, someone in need, or someone just needs like whatever it is, a little pat on the back or whatever it is, to be able to reach them better, and then always improve. Because if we don't have a dozen oranges, we can't give away a dozen oranges. So the only way I know how to give away more metaphorical oranges is by to continually improve myself. And then to how to inspire, believe in, and I think the greatest gift that anyone can ever give another person is by believing in them. And just more than they believe in themselves, where they feel it. And guess what? They don't care. Players, workers, they're always watching. And it doesn't literally, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. They know if you're just checking a box, or they know if you're fully vested. So my book, literally, I was able to write my outline out in about 2 hours. Now, it took me a whole lot longer to write the book. And the company I used was tremendous, gave me great resources. And now it's close to my heart because I was able to thank all the people who have, my family and all those people that have helped me along the way. So now it's trying to give back. But I will tell you this, talk about transitions. I'm going to talk about a transition right now. That same month that I was starting to write my book, a person that I had met a couple years prior, and he had heard about me because when I was with the Knicks, I would have mastermind dinners, taking a page out of Napoleon Hill's book, right? Where every couple weeks, maybe a month, whatever, I'd do 3 or 4 a summer. I'd have mastermind dinners. No agenda, just good food, good company, exchange ideas. And so he had heard about me having some pretty good connections. So I had met him a couple years before. Nothing really happened, but this time it was different. And it was really different because he gave me a metaphor that I had to latch onto. And it was I segued it into basketball. It's what I know best. And he said that the company that he has is a tech company. And whereas most tech companies are like Frankenstein. You have a head from over here, an arm from over here, you have another foot, whatever it is, where you have all these different licenses, Salesforce, ADP, Microsoft, all these different things that you have. And guess what? Like a bad defense, nobody's talking. They don't talk to each other. So what his vision and now reality is that a unified ecosystem. You can go online right now, and we launched on Juneteenth because he's African American, and you want to talk about a story. They say that the best and most successful founders have started companies through real pain. And to listen to his story and to see the need for this, to uplift the African American community, and it's a Rainbow Coalition, don't get me wrong, but it's meant to give opportunities, education, health to the unbanked and people who are unable to do that because of whatever cost they can't afford from normal way. It's a massive undertaking that it took a while for them to accomplish, but now it's called the Bizio, and I'm a part of it, and it's not just me, believe me, but he says part of it was created by the WWW, and that was the World Wide Weber, because, I believed in it so much and was blessed with some really good friends who saw my intensity, and when they met and saw what the plan was, it was just out of control. And so now I'm in tech. It's a transition, but I find from my reading all those hundreds and hundreds of books on the science of personal achievement, they all factor in right here. My teaching, my working with executives at different massive companies. And when you're part of a team, it doesn't matter if you're playing in the NBA, if you're coaching in the NBA, or if you're leading a group of people with a solid mission to get a job done. You have to define roles. You have to believe in the mission. You have to focus. You have to sacrifice. You have to be accountable, commit to greatness. There are certain things that are a must. Doesn't matter what team or what sport.
So the name of the tech company is called The Bizio. I believe you can check it out at www.thebizio.com.
Correct.
The name of the book is How to Make Them Thirsty. And Phil, where could someone reach you if they wanted to consult with you, if they wanted you to come to speak to their company? Where would they best go to connect with you?
Well, I have coachphilweber.com, an email on there, and it can link up to get my book and videos, audio, podcasts, and different things. I've taken the bait.
You're all in.
You're all in.
I'm all in. What can I tell you?
Right.
That's the only way to be. Jumping in with both feet.
Yeah, you don't want to put your toes in. You got to dive in. I'm begrudgingly self-promoting only because again, I think that the message that I have will be helpful. And there are lessons that I've learned, and hopefully by me having gone through the pain, maybe that other people don't have to. They say that people who go through pain and learn are happy. People who don't go through the pain and learn from others are wise. So be wise.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Phil, it was a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for sharing. Joe and I really appreciate your time on, and we hope to have you on again to check back in with you on the evolution of where you're at and how things are going with you in this tech endeavor, and how the whole, I guess, the author cape that you're wearing now, which you share a lot of great, meaningful pieces that I think people would enjoy. And we would encourage them to get the book, to get some insight on your experience in the NBA, experience coaching various people, and your thoughts on how to transition, utilizing growth mindset, and moving forward in your life.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks so much for having me on, and all the best. And you just let me know. I'll be there. Okay.
Thank you so much, Coach. Appreciate it. I'm going to say one last thing.
Sure.
In your book, and I want all of our audience to hear this, you have a quote that says, "One person can change your life." And so I hope everyone that's listening today, that Coach Weber has changed your life, because I feel like he's changed mine just listening to him, bringing even more awareness to my head space. I am in so much gratitude for you being here, sir. Thank you so much. And I hope others get the message like we did. Thank you for being here on Life After Fame. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an honor to be with you guys. Thank you very much, and continued your great work.
What an incredible interview with former NBA player development coach, Phil Weber. Phil is a successful author, businessman, and speaker. But more than that, Coach is an amazing person who cares about people on a very deep human level and has one of the biggest servant hearts you'll ever meet. In this interview, Phil emphasizes believing in yourself, always looking to improve, and to ask yourself more empowering questions that will better serve you in your life. You can pick up a copy of his book, How Do You Make Them Thirsty? A Roadmap for Developing the Potential in Others, out at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, or your favorite bookstore anywhere around the country. To get more information on Phil's new and exciting tech business venture, please visit thebizio.com. That's thebizio, BIZIO.com. Thanks again to all of our Life After Fame members and tribe for listening to our show. You guys rock. Life After Fame is a human interest podcast about the transitions we all face in life, and to remind us that we're more alike than we are different. We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit subscribe. And to find out about previous episodes and exciting new ones just released, please visit us at lifeafterfamenow.com or by subscribing anywhere where podcasts are found. Join us next week as we take a deep dive into our next guest's transition and story of their life after fame. On behalf of this episode's guest, former NBA coach and rising star author, Coach Phil Weber, I'm Joe Mastriano with my co-host, Joe Boglino. See y'all next week. Peace, love, and abundance.